TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Lucky I was quick on the trigger there, Brad. I had us hanging around in the green room there for a while. Did you see that, bro?
I saw.
Yeah, it frightened me.
Yeah, it was all on Simon too.
I know, wasn't it? Yeah.
It can't.
Huge
You're
verse.
not allowed to piss these Aussies off, mate. Can't piss these Aussies off at the moment.
Look at that. He's done swearing already.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. TikTok, it's time to rock, gentlemen.
TikTok, indeed. How's it going?
Is he here?
How's it going?
Is the old man here?
Yes. Yes. Good morning, Tony. And happy birthday for this week. The big 6-0.
Big milestone.
I remember it just.
Oh, there he is. There's the old man.
Yes. Old. Young man.
Yeah.
60
years young.
Yeah, that's it. Happy birthday, mate.
Actually, when I saw his post and saw that it was 60, I thought he was having us on. I thought it was bullshit because you look at his
He doesn't
photos,
look 60, does he? You don't look 60, Tony.
He don't look like, he looks like he's about Brad's age, 35, 40,
Picture the attic, 80
and he's 60.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's doing well. Hey, it's just a number, Andrew. It's just a number.
Yeah, but it's quite a big number.
Yeah.
Mate, plenty more good years left in 60-year-old, that's for sure.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Tony. And
happy birthday, mate.
And we like to celebrate, obviously, our family that are here with us on the channel when they've had little milestones like 60th birthdays. But we appreciate the big support that you've given us since you've joined our community here. So always appreciate that, don't we, Simon?
We do, absolutely. Yeah, it's it's really nice to that people turn up week after week and come on and do stuff, and so we'd like to celebrate those important birthdays for our regulars. So yeah, happy birthday, Tony. We hope you had a lovely one. Looked like you did.
He did.
I don't think he's here. I think he's getting another coffee. He's not here because he hasn't replied.
He's gone back to bed. Oh well, we'll surprise him later.
If he watches the replay, he'll be surprised.
Yes, excellent.
I see.
Oh, here he is. Oh, he's here. He was being polite. He was being polite, Simon.
It's the Yorkshire air.
Happy birthday, Tony. If you missed what we were saying before, thank you very much for your support. You're incredible. And, like I said, I couldn't believe the post said that you were 60. I would never have picked that. I would have picked you being in Brad's pocket, 35, 40. Serious?
Yeah, no, he looks good for his age, 100%. Doing good.
Yeah.
Doing good.
Swine.
Swines.
Jealous of.
No, good to see you guys. We had a good show last week. We had a bit of fun, didn't we, with the AC/DC album, and rightly so. The rankings that we gave that album well deserved. I don't know if you guys saw this too, but Bon Scott's wife passed away during the week as well.
See that.
So
Right.
rest in peace, Bon Scott's wife. I did remember. I do remember seeing that post, Brad, and I think you've got a couple of shout outs that you want to mention.
Yeah. First one to Kurt Hammett. Happy birthday, Kurt. Saw him play just recently. He had the Magic Greenie in his hands for a little bit of that time. And I actually said to some people I caught up with yesterday, it was my good friend Ben's milestone 50th yesterday. And happy birthday, Ben, if you ever watching this.
Yep.
But talking about, how great it was to watch a band like Metallica and, to actually, it's like a piece of history and right there up on stage in front of you and how good it is. But, the sad point that was risen, which I agree with, was, there's not too many bands like that we'll ever see again, I reckon, on a big stage like that can sell out 50 to 80,000 per gig. I don't think it's going to be a thing of the past eventually. But happy birthday, Kurt. Also, Mr. David Coverdale, one of my all-time favourite singers, and we all know him from Whitesnake and Deep Purple, and the Coverdale Page collaboration, which is one of my all-time favourite records. He announced his retirement this past fortnight or week ago, I think it was, and I think we missed it by a hair last episode. So Andrew reminded me that we should probably wish him a happy retirement. And personally, I want to thank David for all the inspiration over the years. And, he's been a massive influence to me as a singer. Not that I can sing anything like David Coverdale, but I think he was a massive singer. And, the Burn record and Stormbringer are two of my all-time favorite records. And, I've been blasting a bit of Deep Purple and whatnot, to celebrate. And the early Whitesnake stuff as well as the later Whitesnake stuff is incredible. And 28 years ago yesterday, we lost Michael Hutchence from In Excess. So I just wanted to, sad day, but also if you get the opportunity, go listen to a few In Excess songs. I had a good listen to some yesterday, and one that really sort of gives me the goosebumps every time is By My Side. That's a high, that's a never a skip, that one. Yeah. So, that's all I wanted to sort of talk about there, Andrew and Simon. But do yourself a favour and celebrate Michael Hutchence' life by going and listening to a bit of In Excess this week.
Yeah, great Aussie band. Big band here in New Zealand, bro, in the late 80s. The album before Kick was pretty huge, but when Kick came out, that's what made them achieve superstar status. And, I was always blown away by how cool he was. Tight band, really, really good band. And they did it the old-fashioned way, Simon, too, these guys. They toured long distances, and Brad has told us many times about this experience that he's had himself touring around Australia in the van,
the
traveling.
private jet experience and the
yeah. But no,
nine in a van. Yes.
Yeah, the traveling all around Aussie in their vans, building up an audience the hard way. So to do that in Australia, it's a difficult thing. It's not like just jumping on the M1, Simon, and from London to Liverpool to Manchester. You know what I mean?
And then back to the Blue Boar for a sausage sandwich at 4 a.m.
Yeah. It's hard work. So, well done to In Excess. Great Aussie band, bro.
One of the biggest exports here from Australian music, really. Let's be honest, they were probably one of the most successful bands from Australia. And I saw them back in the 90s with Michael Hutchence Centennial Park. It was called Concert for Life, and it was a remarkable gig. In excess where I think they were headlining or second to Crowded House, maybe, I can't remember. Someone might remember and be able to sort of remind me in the comments here. But yeah, it was an incredible gig. But that was around the time, Andrew and Simon, that I was a big Doors nut. So I used to have a love-hate with the relationship with Michael, thinking he wanted to be Jim Morrison. And I was more than, you know, in hindsight now, I was a little bit envious more so than anything, I guess, that, you know, he was pulling it off, because to pull off the Jim Morrison persona on stage and have your own sort of click to it, he had his own vibe to it. But yeah, he was an amazing frontman and an incredible singer, and yeah, someone who has inspired that many people here in Australia. You know, and his story.
He pulled it off. He pulled it off, bro. He pulled off. You know, I was a Doors fan too before you know, back when they had that first album and that second album, he had a mullet, and then he grew his hair. He grew his hair long, and then we knew when Kick came out. I knew he was channeling Jim Morrison, but he, like you said, bro, he pulled it off, and he did it well.
His own twist to it, and he made it his own too. And you know, not saying that he copped, you know, Jim Morrison, but I guess at the end of the day, if you're gonna cop someone, copping Jim Morrison's a good one to cop, because he was one of the coolest dudes alive. So yeah,
completely.
But anyway, guys, that was all I wanted to sort of bring up. Oh, also, there was an auction this week of Gary Moore's guitars, and Andrew shared, was it £250,000 it went for the Stratocaster, the red?
The Strat went, I don't think, I'm just looking now, and I think the 59 Les Paul hasn't been sold yet. I think that's due late 31st of December. That's what it looks like.
Right.
Yeah, I'm putting a bid in.
I'm putting a bid in, Simon. I'm putting a bid in, and I'm gonna sit it right beside this stripe here.
Oh.
Yes.
So if it's a 59, well, it's a 59, it's got to go for $1 million.
Well, you would think it would go for close to that, Andrew, because realistically,
it's still got the blues guitar, isn't it?
Yeah, and all 59s are, you know, in excess of
$1 million.
Yeah. So, and because it's such an iconic guitar, it was played on the song "Still Got the Blues." I know that Joe Bonamassa snaffled up one of the SLO 100s, the Soldano heads. So maybe Joe Bonamassa's got his eyes on it, and I couldn't think of a better person to actually own that guitar, to be honest with you. So
we'll see.
But he'll have to try and outbid me, gentlemen, because I'm going for
it. He's sold everything.
Well, the check's coming.
Yeah. Well, Simon, you and I can go halves in the guitar, mate, with the royalties that we're getting from Andrew.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, great. Yeah. When Andrew sends us all the money, yes. From enormous profits that we're making.
Andrew's going to go bankrupt trying to pay us.
$1 million. I reckon it'll go for $1 million. Easy. Got to.
But yeah, the Strat went for 254,000, and then there was a Les Paul R9 aged prototype that sold for 121,000.
Correct.
And the ES335, which sold for 48,000. Oh, look, still affordable.
Well, that 335 is one, I think it was on the album cover for the Blues, I think. I can't remember which album cover it's on. But that was an incredible sounding guitar. And
I reckon a musician's going to buy it, because Kurt has made such a big deal about having Greenie on the road for the last few years, playing it. I think another musician's going to see, there's room there for me to grab it, Simon. You know, so and do something maybe a little bit similar to what Kurt's doing.
I know Joe Bonamassa was offered to buy that guitar, and it didn't work. I think it was offered to buy Greenie at the time when Kurt was in talks as well. but I don't think he was. I felt like it was a good fit for him. But maybe he thinks this guitar will be a good fit for him, so maybe he'll get it. I'm hoping someone like Joe gets it so it actually gets played and not so stuck in a museum.
That's what I mean. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. I think someone's going to copy Kurt, and well done if that's the case.
Good
So anyway,
news.
boys,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the time. It's we're half an hour of chit chat, and we got a show to do.
Yeah. We do this every time, but that's all right.
Yeah. Simon, we've got a few folks here in the chat. It would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge them officially.
So yeah, well, we've got Tony, of course, the birthday boy. Happy birthday again, Tony. And we've got Alan as well. I think they're the only two people who've made a comment. Nobody else has commented. So make a comment, and we'll say good morning to you. But thanks for joining us. There are 6 people currently who are joining us. So
fantastic.
Morning to Alan and to Tony and everybody else who's watching.
Awesome.
We hope you've had good weeks.
Well, thank you, folks, for joining us. And if you're watching on a replay and you've managed to get this far on replay, we do get some people that are interested in some of the things we have to say. So we really appreciate that. And we're getting some good comments on some of our community posts. I've struck up a conversation with a guy that saw the Rolling Stones play in '69 at Madison Square Gardens, and saw Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac in the States in '69 too. So yeah, really, really nice. Trying to get him on the show, guys. So whether or not we'll be successful, I'll keep you in the loop. But we appreciate you watching and hanging out with us and commenting. Please subscribe to our channel. I'm going to also include Brad's social media links for you guys as well to go and check out if you can do that for us. Thank you. The Rock Professor, there they are there. Yep. Is Brad Cook Music at Brad Cook Music.
Yep.
And the Rock Professor's there at Simon Williams 33. And our good friend John ZD351, who's not in the chat today, go and check him out, please.
Yes.
So this show is going to be a bit of a conversation about obviously the Anthology 4 album that was released a few days ago. We haven't gone through and analyzed it like we would normally for a ranking of the tracks, folks. It's more of a get together, a bit of a celebration, in fact. And we're going to, Brad, do the same thing next week, because on Wednesday, Disney Plus is going to be putting on its platform the Anthology series that came out in 1995. Yes. 9 episodes. So we're going to obviously just talk about that, mainly because it's a celebration from us towards this band, Simon. You know, we love talking about the Beatles. It's going to give us an opportunity to sort of fit in with them in a contemporary situation to Brad and Simon, because they're going to be dominating the entertainment news for a while. So who said, Simon, we can't be contemporary on this channel?
Yes. Contemporary for a band that started in 1962, yes.
Beg your pardon, 1958?
1958, I suppose, with the Quarrymen, yeah. Yes. I mean, you know, we have to say, don't we, the greatest band ever? I'm going to go the greatest band ever. Still underrated as a, you know, for their... what they did in that sort of 8-year period, 62 to 70. It's absolutely extraordinary, really. And I think it's still, those ripples and vibrations are still reverberating, you know, across the music world and also the cultural world too. And as I say only half joking that the Beatles are underrated, but I do kind of feel like we still haven't seen completely what their you know, what their influence, what their you know, how brilliant a band they were.
I think you know, with everything that's been coming out over the last little while, with the you know, well, the original Anthology series came out, what, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Wow. 30 years ago. Is that right?
95. 95.
95,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow. Now that makes me feel old. But yeah, 30 years ago, the original Anthology came out, and I think, you know, in that 30-year period, a few things have trickled out already. Like there was, you know, some expanded editions of some of the records come out with, you know, take ones, take twos, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think they've exhausted what they've got in, you know, music to give anymore. I don't think there's much there. You know, there might be stuff there that you know, other takes or whatever, but they're probably crash and burns. But I kind of like that. I kind of like hearing the crash and burns and the talking and the studio chatter and the, you know, they sounded like they were having such a great time. I mean, I guess it was a really wonderful period of their lives, but they were living in the moment. They were enjoying it. But I tend to think the release of the Anthology 4, which is what we're here for today, is a good spread of pretty much from their first album, Please Please Me, through to I guess Abbey Road. There's a bit of everything on there. Where the other anthologies were period based from the early days, the club days, Hamburg and stuff like that, through to a certain period. Then the two was, I think, around Sergeant Pepper's to I think Magical Mystery Tour around that period, and then White Album from memory, and then 3 was the rest. And this 4 is like all the leftovers, I think, that scrubbed up and were suitable to release. Now, we've only had a few days to consume this, guys. Really, we've only had, what, 2 or 3 days? I've spent a bit of time in my car over the last 3 days, so that's all I've been listening to in my car since it came out. And I've got some notes and everything about the songs, and no rankings or anything like that, but just some opinions there based around this volume 4 of the anthology. And I'm interested to see what you guys are thought about the release. I mean, it's a pretty big news. There's a lot of people putting up reviews and stuff like that, and I'm not reading them, and I don't want to read them because I wanted to hear what you guys have to say first before I go and watch the reviews and stuff on YouTube and read all the reviews that I'm seeing pop up in my Instagram feed and Facebook feed. So have you guys had a chance to listen to it? I mean, that's why we're here, so I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, I've listened to it once all the way through. It's Brad, just to add into your background stuff there, Anthology 1 covered the Quarrymen, the Decca Record audition tapes, Please Please Me, Hard Day's Night, and Beatles for Sale. So they're included. So Anthology 2, which was released in 1996, so they're very close together. So that had sessions from Help, Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sergeant Pepper's, and Magical Mystery Tour.
Yep.
And then Anthology 3 was the White Album, Let It Be, in Abbey Road.
Right. Yep.
So there's a clear chronological thing went over the first 3, and they were all released. So March 1996 was Anthology 2, and October 96 was Anthology 3. So they've had to wait 29 years for Anthology 4 to do. So yeah, I've listened to it. Clearly I mean, I only started on Friday really, because that's when it was released on midnight on Thursday, and so I didn't get a chance to dig into it until Friday. So I've only had a couple of days to run it through. There's quite, was it 35 tracks on it or something? I can't remember how many there are, but quite a lot. But yes, I think that it's this is from all over. It's got stuff from all over, isn't it? And as you say, a bit more relaxed, a bit more the chat in between. And it's. I was listening to an interview with Giles Martin, and he said when he was compiling, the first thing he heard when he's compiling was the voice of his dad coming out of the speakers.
Yeah. Take 2 or whatever it says. Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Brad. I enjoy hearing the chatter and the chit chats and the few shows that we've done when we've made references to the previous anthology albums. We've always agreed and thought that was great. But there's a couple of standout tracks for me on this recording. I, I know they've got the technology to clean up whatever they've got, and it sounds really, really good. I love it. I've only listened to it through Spotify, guys, so I don't have any LPs or CDs. I'll probably end up getting the CDs in a couple of weeks' time. But it sounds great, and Giles, as you have sort of alluded to, Simon, through his father, has become a great caretaker of this project and knows what he's doing. And that comes through because he's got a lot of experience now. But there's some standout tracks for me. The Get Back, the Get Back tracks on this, and Don't Let Me Down. Are just incredible tracks. And this is probably, and I have to back you up too, Brad. In your little introduction, it's the best of the three because it's the one that you'll give to your friend that wants to hear how the Beatles sort of worked, Simon, how they nutted something out, because it's at the beginning of their career to the end, so and then obviously you would say to them, and when you finish listening to this and you want to go and dig more, and don't forget, people are going to be doing this. There's going to be Zoomers in their 20s who are going to be on this Beatles discovery through this album and this series, Brad, that's been released. There are going to be people, hundreds of thousands of people discovering the Beatles. And so they got to start somewhere. And this is probably going to give them, I think, one of the greatest stepping stones to dive into the Beatles, because yeah. That's my quick little intro thought, guys.
I mean, the good thing I've noticed, mind you guys, I've only listened about 3 or 4 times now, is how you can hear, like from the very first song, I Saw Her Standing There, take 2.
Yep.
How close it is to the version of I Saw Her Standing There that we're all so familiar with. Like,
yes,
what I'm saying is, we're listening to take 2. I don't know which take it was that we actually heard on Please Please Me, but by golly, it's very close. You know what I mean? It's so close. There's a few little things you would know, that's not the same. That's not the same. But other than that, you can hear. The one thing I mentioned to my partner Jackie when we were listening to it today in the car is it's great how you can hear the evolution of the song. You can hear how they actually wrote and recorded. So basically, in the studio, they had to be pretty well rehearsed because they were going in and cutting most of the tracks live, vocally and musically. There was only a few overdubs, obviously, on the first albums. You can hear that.
Can I just jump in, bro?
Yeah.
So I just want to add something quickly. No, they weren't rehearsed. Paul McCartney said, you guys have to remember that that John and I wrote these songs, and most of these songs Ringo and George heard the first time in the studio. So that's how good that band was, bro. They only did probably 3 or 4 takes.
That's amazing. But when I mean well rehearsed, I guess what I meant, bad way of putting it, a tight unit that knew each other so well.
Yes.
They were a very tight rehearsed band. So basically, obviously the years in Hamburg of touring and playing 8 hours a day and all that stuff that they did, the stupid hours of, each set they played for an hour and then they had to play 4 hours or whatever of music. And they were so tight. When it came to a creative aspect, they could go in the studio, record pretty much the whole song from start to finish, all the harmonies, all the bass lines, all the guitars and drums like together. And you listen to some of the bass lines there, like, and Paul's just singing over the top of them. You're like, I thought, geez, mate, you'd have to record that bass line first and then sing over it. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of exceptional musicianship going on there. You can hear it. You know, in the takes of This Boy, take 12 and 13. Now, they were a B-side to, I think, Real Love. I think they were on Real Love as a B-side single. I got that as a CD single. But you can hear that they're trying to remember the order of the lyrics as they're going. And they muff it up and they're laughing at each other. It's just comical. But that's the really fun side of this band. You can actually hear them in the studio, you know, you creating magic that we listen to however often we put the Beatles on, and we just love and adore. And how many
Not
people,
often enough.
yeah, and how many people put on the albums just to listen to the Beatles because they love them, and
Yeah.
they were just like that in the studio. Just went in, recorded. You know, you can hear them before the song. You know, I've forgotten what song it is. I think it's I think it's actually Money. I'm not sure. One of them, you can hear John sort of saying, sing this, and then they just go, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're off. and they do it. It's just magical. And it's captured. That's mad, you know, what do they call it? Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's captured.
I think, Brad, just a couple of things to add, that when they started off, they recorded everything to two track. So it's not multi-track, and they're live in a studio straight to 2-track. So basically, what you've got. So the Giles Martin thing is, you can go back now to those early recordings and separate each of the instruments onto separate tracks. But on the first couple, they never were. They were just straight to 2-track in the studio. That's what you got, and in effect, all the production and everything is pre the tape. And you don't then go and mix it afterwards. What you've got on the tape, balance-wise, instrument-wise, whatever, is what you're going to put out. Now, I know that I listened to an interview with him. He said later on they actually did things differently. There are tracks where they put like piano and voice down and something, and then they would put the bass and the drums down later.
Well,
I think they started to do studio work, then they started to build. Even in the late 60s, they were building up tracks from scratch and laying down. Not, you would think, oh yes, I'm going to lay down the drums first or whatever, and the bass, but no, they didn't do that. Not on. They were quite happy to sort of do a piano and vocals, and then Paul would lay down a bass, and then lay down the drums afterwards.
You can hear that on Baby You're a Rich Man. It says takes 11 and 12. You can hear that it's less bass guitar, it's keyboards and drums, and there's a guitar there. And I think Paul says, "Oh, we'll just record the piano and drums and do the rest later." He sort of says that.
Yeah.
So that's later in the. You can hear. That's what I love about this anthology. You can hear the progression from the early days where they had to just go in there and cut the song, and 1 or 2 or 3 takes and pick the best one. And then obviously as they, had a little bit more studio time and a little bit more success, they could almost dictate what they wanted to do in the studio, which was, by the time Sgt. Pepper's or Revolver into Sgt. Pepper's, they were recording giants. They dictated what they wanted to do, and they did what they wanted to do, which was when we saw the magic even expand, in my opinion, because they went from being a good little live band, recording everything fairly live, to tracking, and going, we're going to track this and we're going to put that and we're going to put back masking this on, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it needs a new bass line, so they would pull the bass line and put a new one in, things like that, which they didn't have the opportunity to do in the early days, Simon. But
no, for sure, no, absolutely. And the recording, got the 4 tracks, then 8 tracks, and as we know, Sgt. Pepper's recorded on 2 4-tracks put together, which has proved quite difficult with the synchronizing software, but it was difficult to deal with. But yeah, absolutely. Well, that's that thing about the studio becoming a tool, isn't it? Becomes your habitat where you're going to record, and in a sense, all of those later albums, where they went in the studio, created in the studio as much as just recorded, you know. And then every band in the world, you know, was doing it. You know, 5 years later, that's how you worked. 10 years later, 20 years later, that's how you worked. You know, you went in the studio and built it all up from scratch. Still doing it today. You know, bands still go in there and build things up. You know, get beats and then, you know, layer keyboards, bass, instruments over the top. Absolutely, Beatles pioneering once again.
Yeah.
Well, I think probably with the
Is
Beach Boys, but
I mean, the anthologies is for the fans. Let's be honest. It's the anthology series is for the fans to enjoy the stuff that we want to hear, the outtakes, the, you know, them creating in the studio. Like Andrew said, this is a good anthology series to throw at someone who's, you know, new to the Beatles and go, well, this is how they wrote, this is how they did it. But I have to say it like this: is this the sort of thing that you would give to someone who's never heard the Beatles to listen to? Probably not. Maybe give them the red and the blue greatest hits, you know, double albums that came out.
oh,
So
completely,
that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, but
I agree
once
with
they
that.
got into that, you would throw the anthology series at them so they can, you know, have a listen to how they created in the studio and get a you know, it's awesome in my opinion. You're sitting there listening to it, and you sort of, I've always wondered, you know, in the years leading up to the anthology series coming out, wonder how they did this, wonder how they did that, wonder how they did this. And then when you hear the anthology series, including this anthology 4, you're listening to the way they're recording certain things. Like I said, Baby You're a Rich Man, you can hear Paul talking about it, and then they go in and cut the track. So you can actually get a grasp of how they created, which is really, really cool. And it's an insight to how the Beatles worked. And I think they were very unique. You know, they were a very unique band in the way they operated, the way they wrote, the way they recorded. And like you said, Simon, from 63 through to 70, they changed so much, not only the look of the band, but the way the music evolved and the way they recorded. So there was such an amazing contrast between Please Please Me and Abbey Road, and the anthology series covers that, which is great to, you know, sit back and have a good listen to and absorb it. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think I mean, for me, listening to my favorite on it would have probably been In My Life. I think listening to the first take of that, you know, first take of In My Life, and then then I went and listened to the version that I'm used to hearing In My Life. And there's not a lot of, yeah, there's a subtle difference, but there's not a lot of difference, guys, which is a magic thing about the Beatles. They were so good in the studio. That's, you know, they obviously cut however many takes of a song and they picked the best one. I feel like I'm doing all the talking, gentlemen.
Andrew, come on.
Oh, well, yeah. Look, I agree with you guys. I think it's an incredible package, and I just have to say, you know, well done to the people, the proprietors, the executors, and the people who look after, you know, the Beatles. What do you call it? The Beatles empire.
Curators.
You know.
Okay, yeah.
And allowing this to happen, and being smart and clever. You know, we keep saying this, that there's a business to music, and obviously this band's very smart at making and continuing that legacy of music. And you know, this is going to end up probably doing really, really well, Brad, in the charts, and rightly so, and in sales. But you know, I haven't read any reviews. I saw one channel yesterday morning talking about this package, and I have to make it quite clear that as much as I adore and love the Beatles, I am not a Beatles nut. And we know goes, don't we, from doing this show, that there are degrees of music fans. There are, and yeah. But I was watching this channel, and they knew exactly which songs had been released on previous bootlegs and stuff like that. So for them, it wasn't as much of a big deal as it was for a fan like me, who's familiar, Brad, with just their official recordings. I don't know a lot about their bootlegs, and I don't really want to be fair, but but I like the fact that they've curated some of these great recordings from bootlegs, Simon, and given them an official status, because that's what's going to get fans listening to the music in the end, I think, Simon.
Yeah, I have a slightly different view, I have to say. I for me, I think the first three make a lot of sense because they go into the three different eras of the Beatles and they pick out stuff. I think this one is much more of a pick and mix, goes across their entire careers. And I know that there's been quite a lot of, fan chatter about, for instance, there's a Revolution #9 version that seems to be, and a track called Carnival of Light, which I think a lot of people have been clamoring for a long time, that hasn't been. I think they thought it was going to be on this anthology, and it isn't on this anthology. So it's I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see how this fits in with what we're going to see next week. The Disney Plus programs we're going to see next week, and how that fits together. Because I think that clearly there is a tie-up between the two things. You release them, but for me, I think for me the first three they're coherent and they have a structure to them. This one, for me, it works less well if you're just going back and forth. And I like the chat and I like the stuff, but for me this is more of a niche release than the other three. If I think the other three are really important in understanding their most important songs. The alternative takes of Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane and all that. I think that's important, and it's really cool to hear those things. I think for me, this is a bit more niche, and actually, as Andrew said, it's more for the fans. If you're keen on this and you know about Beatles bootlegs and things, and having Giles Martin tidy it all up and release them, I think that's fantastic. But I don't think this is as important as the other three. I think the other three are really the important ones.
Here's a question for you, gentlemen. Firstly, before my question, a lot of these songs that are on this anthology, there was probably at least a dozen or close to a dozen of them that I know that were put out on, say, the expanded, remastered, reissued version of Abbey Road and like this, and Sgt. Pepper's that haven't expanded with some of these outtakes, and that they were taken from that onto this anthology. But then there was stuff on here that's, well, supposedly on bootlegs and not heard before in this fashion. But all that aside, would you think, gentlemen, and I'll start with you, Andrew, and then Simon to finish you off because you've sort of raised this topic now, do you think it would have been better for them to make Anthology 1, 2, and 3 and put these chronologically into the correct space on the anthology series, Andrew? Or do you think that the way it's done is probably better?
You know what? That's a very good question, and something similar came up in another conversation I had. So thank you for asking that. I'm going to say no, because I don't like it too much when they go and tutu and muck around with something that's already been done. I don't mind if they do, like on Spotify, they'll have a re-release, Simon, and you'll have the original songs, and then you'll have some live songs and some demos that they did. I don't have a problem with that packaging, but no, Brad. I'm happy with Anthology 1, 2, and 3 as they are. I'm still going to stand by my original point and say that I think that this is a compilation that's going to serve a purpose, Brad, of and I got to say, I've listened to it a few times, and I've just been blown away by just listening to the progression. And again, this is getting back to my argument of we're all Beatles fans of different degrees, and so therefore I have to say, we're a little bit higher up the hierarchy of Beatle fans, because we can appreciate the fact, Simon, we talk about this often on the channel, we love hearing the development, and Brad, you've said it a few times already, it's just that extra spice that you like. And I know from watching other shows in the past, when bands have released something similar to this, there's a lot of people out there who don't like this shit. They don't like this, they just want to listen to the final albums. So I get that too, but obviously we're a little bit more curious here on this channel, and I think because we're all songwriters to a degree, we will want to hear how the greatest songwriters in music history developed, Brad. So you've said it. I'm happy with the package. I love it.
Yeah. Simon, I'm guessing you're probably more from your previous comment, you're probably more along the way of thinking they should have done it chronologically and just done the three releases again.
Well, it's very difficult, isn't it? So let me give you an example. So on here they've got something, but just the strings only of something. Now, I think that's of niche interest to, but in effect, I wouldn't necessarily be putting that on Anthology 2 myself, or Anthology 3, whichever that's out 3. I don't think I'd be putting that on. I might do if it was, if I felt it was sufficiently interesting, but I think that for myself, that, for instance, is a good example of what I would call a niche track. Somebody who's really into the Beatles, got all their official stuff, and is looking for bootlegs or whatever. Then fine, I think something, Take 39 instrumental strings only is worthy of a listen. Myself, I don't think I'd be going back and listening to that 100 times more. Whereas, something as a complete song, absolutely. So I don't think I'd be adding much of this into the existing first 3 Anthology things. I think for me, this is more, and I don't have any real insight into how they chose, the things, how they chose the tracks, and what, and how they actually did it. I mean, it's probably what's available to some extent, what they can do. But yes, for me, I don't think I'd be putting much of this into the first 3. I think that as a pick and mix, 4th Anthology, it's fine. And it works doing what it does, which is much more showing things in progress, trying to get behind the scenes of when they're in the studio and things, and messing about and the talking and stuff. And I think that's fine. I think that if I view it like that, then I'm comfortable with it. For me, there's the first 3, as I've said, I think are really important, because I think they give that kind of the background to their major works, major stuff they've done, whereas this is much more kind of all over the place. And so a pick and mix, I think, is a good idea. You've got, I saw us standing there, Money, and then you've got This Boy, which is on the Free as a Bird EP. So you've gone from one end of their career to the other. And clearly that's not a chronological thing. So I think that I wouldn't put much of this as in the 1, 2, and 3. I think I'd, this is fine as a pick and mix, stuff that they've dug out, thought was worthy of release. It's difficult.
I agree with you guys. I'm glad that it's not thrown in to the guts of an already packaged release. It's a separate entity in itself, but I think it is chronological on, like, from I saw us standing there through to the last song, though, is to when they recorded it. I think it's chronological from that point of view, Simon. Like, so in other words, they recorded
do This Boy early on.
Back in the early in the career. I think it was Please Please Me, or I can't remember what. Sorry, with the Beatles, I think that's on. I can't think off the top of my head, but you might be able to look that up. But I think chronologically, it's actually in order on Anthology from track 1 onwards. Not necessarily on release date, but from when they probably recorded that session. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I kind of like how they've possibly done that, but I'm going to agree with you, Simon, on the point of, say, for example, the strings for Something. It was very interesting to hear, and I loved hearing it on its own. But I'm not going to go back and listen to that over listening to the song itself again. You know what I mean? It's not something that I'm. But again, this is for the fans, and I hope and pray that new fans don't just go and listen to the anthologies and think, "Oh, that's how the Beatles sound." That's my only fear with these sort of packages, because someone might just pick, look up Something by the Beatles, and that comes on, and they go, "What's this?" Oh, whatever, and they move on. Do you know what I'm saying? They might overlook.
No, absolutely, yeah. And I think
there was the Abbey Road version, which is the final cut, which is a point that's no one really talking about. Is there's all these anthology series coming out, and it's great for the fans that love the Beatles, but for new fans that have never listened to the song Something off Abbey Road, and they listen to that string only one, they might go, "Well, it doesn't really. It's a nice." Pretty,
absolutely.
it's nice, but they're not getting the impact that they should probably get when they listen to the song off Abbey Road, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
there's a point there, I think, yeah.
I completely agree with you about it. I think, that, as I said earlier, that for me, the starting point is go and listen to the albums as they're released. They are, they're the historical document of what those things, especially the later ones, when they're using the studio as a tool and they're not touring anymore. The creative leaps that they make are extraordinary. The amount of creativity. So you go from Rubber Soul to Sergeant Pepper's. It was an amazing kind of leap. Forward in things, then to Abbey Road, Let It Be. They're amazing records, and they're kind of sort of punkish, much more the punky thing of the White Album, sort of, back to their rock and roll roots kind of thing. But I think that's where people should start. And I think, that if you're really keen, you go to the first three. And then if you want to hear the strings from Something, then, but that's, for me, this is as Andrew said, this is very much for the fans. And, and I in my head, I have a chronology of the way that you should do these things, and the chronology starts with listen to the official albums, then the anthology. So I've got, the Beatles at the BBC and all those things, and I listen to them a couple of times, but I don't listen to them very much, as whereas I listen to the albums, absolutely, because I've got them on vinyl, so I'm keen on going back to, Hard Day's Night and Help, because I've got those on, because they're fantastic pop records, knock out these fantastic records, 2.5, 3 minute singles, that's what I did with Hard Day's Night. They wrote the second side of the album just like that, bang.
Well, there you go, guys. You've heard it firsthand from the Rock Professor. There's a chronological order that you're meant to listen to the Beatles, the albums, anthologies, and then the live stuff.
And I'll be round your house if you start doing it differently.
I think the good thing too with this package too, and it goes back to the Led Zeppelin releases that we had recently, where journalists themselves were really praising these kind of packages, because it gave them access when they were writing articles, Brad and Simon, and indeed probably a generation of authors, to go back, and it makes their research, their music research, a little bit more easier, I'm sure. Because Brad, if you're writing a book on George Harrison as a songwriter, you would go and listen to Something, and then you would go and listen to the strings, wouldn't you? And you'd be analyzing whether or not George Harrison was involved in somehow how the strings were scored, and you were trying to get some research on that. So now we're getting down to the nuts and bolts, but that's the kind of shit that we like here on this channel. So if it means that somebody's going to write a good book because they've got this reference material, and Simon, you know about that, reference material is important. If you're going to write something, you've got to have good so if we've got this music easier and accessible to a generation of researchers, because how many books are being produced on the Beatles now, that are still coming out. So yeah, it's a celebration, definitely.
I think there's something really interesting about what you just said, actually, that the Beatles universe is curated like no other universe. So you've got the anthology stuff, you've got the sound, the anthology stuff, you've got the film stuff, the Peter Jackson stuff that we've already seen, the stuff that's coming out next week. And you also got the sort of Mark Lewisham books as well, which is like, what the Beatles did every day from 1958 to and he's wading his way through the mass of information from 62 to 66, which is next book, which you've been writing for about 15 years and still doesn't seem to be that close to finishing. But it's part of that kind of Beatles curation of the Beatles universe, isn't it? The three sides, the audio, the visual, and the written word. And I feel like I can't think of anybody else where it's done to that extent. But also the fact that, as Andrew, as you said, that they're kind of interlinked. Like this week we've got Anthology 4. Next week we've got the Disney programs coming out. So linked together, in a way that I don't think any other band really has really done, have they?
Well, certainly not in a pop culture sense.
No.
Mm.
And that's really where I'm talking from. Is that nobody else does it. I mean, the other person who I think is reasonably close but doesn't quite have is Dylan. Dylan has his bootleg series, and has let's face it, he blooming started it. It's all your fault here, Bob. Was he released? I don't remember this. He released Biograph, which was a 4-album set of stuff from all over from his career. It wasn't really chronological, but it had things like Caribbean Wind on it and Blind Willie McTell. And nobody could believe that he'd written these songs and not released them. Nope. So he's got that bootleg series, which I think, which I would equate to the anthology stuff. So individual concerts, say Carnegie from '62, and and then other live stuff, the Manchester Free Trade Hall stuff, where the Judas concert, and and then all sorts of outtakes and stuff that he's recorded but never released. So I feel like that's mixed in like the anthology stuff, but he's going to release about 17 of them. But what isn't there is the Mark Lewisham bit, which kind of and there's not the Mark Lewisham. There's not really nearly so much of the audio visual stuff either. People didn't make films about Dylan in the same way as they made films about the Beatles.
Look,
good point.
I think overall it's great that they're releasing it. It's better than it sitting dusty in the vault somewhere and the fans not get the chance to listen to it. I guess in a roundabout way, it's marketable. They can sell it. They can make money from it. But it's also giving back to the fans a little bit. I think, for when the Beatles disbanded in 1970, we're still talking about the Beatles today. So it's wonderful that it's being released rather than sitting on a shelf being dusty. And, I think we should be grateful for that point, because there's probably Beatles fans that have long passed now that never had the opportunity to hear this stuff, and they probably would have loved to have heard it. And that sort of, to me, when I think about it like that, I think how lucky are we to still be able to listen to this stuff that's being released.
Amen.
It's,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
and look at it, but also, in a couple of days' time, watch it, because that DVD series came out 30 years ago, so they've cleaned that all up. So there's nothing new except for one episode, which is new. So they've cleaned up the audio and the visual. So that'll be really, really cool. But look, I agree with you, Brad. And it gives an opportunity for for not only people in our universe here to talk about it, big players, major media outlets to talk about the Beatles. So, and I love that. And can I say one other thing before I pass it on to you guys too? And we like that here on this channel. We always celebrate it. Simon, you mentioned Bob Dylan curating his legacy. I don't know how many, I won't swear, how many times I mentioned Neil Young doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having control. I hope that we get something like this from the Rolling Stones, moving forward, because I don't know what the Stones have got, but maybe, I know they're recording a new album, but maybe they need to sort of take a little bit of control in their legacy, Brad, and get it out there.
I hope.
Do you think that new release of Black and Blue is the first of those, Andrew?
Could be.
Because that had expanded stuff, didn't it, and other bits, from that era. So, I agree with you. I hope that they do. I'll just sorry, Brad. One other point. Originally, Anthology 4 was only going to be released as part of the 30th anniversary of the other 3 anthologies. So basically, you'd had to buy the 4 anthologies to get the 4 Anthology 4. You'd have had to buy the other 3 plus this one. At a cost of £300 or something. So I think it's great that they've released Anthology 4 as a separate 2 CD, 3 LP collection. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. So you can pick them up for 25 or 30 quid. You don't have to spend 340 quid or whatever it is for the full set. That's a wallet squeezing amount, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I know they're selling it for quite a lot of money. It's quite up there when it comes to the dollar value here for it in Australia, but it is for the fans, and that's what I mean. You've got to sort of look at the cost of living now, and I guess for them to reproduce things like this, it does cost money, but they're going to make a lot of money out of this, without a doubt. You know what I mean? So giving back to the fans is something that is I think a wonderful thing, like I said, and I'll hit that home. I'm glad that even down to the last 3 songs, which I haven't really discussed yet, they've polished up the production of them. They've used the same technology for Get Back, and isolated John's voice on Free as a Bird, Real Love, and Now and Then, tidied them up. They're stunning mixes. I'm not going to say which I think's better, because I don't really want to sort of go down that path right this second, because I haven't had a lot of time to absorb Real Love and Free as a Bird with this new 2025 mix. But I do kind of like Free as a Bird and Real Love the way they were in the 90s, because it had that ghostly vibe, that vocally Lennon's vocal was a bit ghostly and whatnot. But then there's the other side of me, being a real sort of recording buff and wanting to make everything sound as good as possible. I love hearing the vocal up front and cleaned up, and so we can really hear Lennon singing, which is what they've done with, I'm guessing, with the Anthology 9 series show that's going to be on Disney. They'll be doing that, isolated all the drums, all everything, stripped it all back, remixed it.
Able to do it.
Done that. Yeah, I think that's what that show might be, Brad. Be a little bit of that technology talking about that. Yeah.
And if we, the people that are sort of picking on it, saying it's AI, it's AI. Well, the Get Back series that we watched, was it 3 series or 3 or 4 episodes? Was it 3? 3 episodes,
3.
wasn't it?
I'm
3
pretty
long
sure it's 3.
episodes, and there's things in there that we wouldn't have got, like the conversations between the band members as clear and everything as we did, because they managed to go, well, that's Paul's voice, so that's one track, and it picks
Yep.
up everything Paul's saying, whether it's soft, loud, or whatever, it's there, and it learns that, and it takes it to a track instead of it just being part of the audio that gets lost. Which, there's a lot of conversations in that Get Back that we would not have ever had the opportunity to actually hear without AI. So, it's a topic that I don't really want to get too heavily involved in now, because I think we could talk for hours about it, guys. But the 3 last tracks on Anthology 4, Free as a Bird, Real Love, and Now and Then, AI was used to isolate John's voice. And there's a couple of
split him from the instrument, wasn't it? Yeah.
There's a couple of changes there. Like in Free as a Bird, I think Harrison in the 95 version says life that we once knew, and then it's changed to love that we once knew. So there's a few little changes, and I'm not sure, how that's going to go down with fans. But I guess at the end of the day, like I said, I think it's good to have these things as a fan. You can pick and choose what you like, what you don't like, and we're all got opinions, and that's the wonderful thing about us being individuals. We can go listen to this stuff, absorb what we like, take from what we like, not listen to what we don't like again, and then get on with life. Enjoy the fact that there's something fresh there to listen to by the Beatles. For a band that really only had a recording career from 63 to 70, really. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the same thing with like Jimi Hendrix stuff still getting churned out by the Hendrix family, and Janie keep pushing new stuff, new re-releases, new this and that. I know some people that really diss that, but there's some wonderful stuff that's been released that none of us would have ever heard, even stuff that they reckon was on bootlegs, this and that, but you wouldn't have heard it the way it's been put in a package. So there's 2 sides to it, and I don't say one's right, one's wrong. Just enjoy it for what it is. It's a beautiful package, in my opinion. That's all I have to say about it, gentlemen. I'll hand it over to you two, Andrew, Simon.
Well, I was listening to Giles Martin. He was saying that what he's working on currently is, I think he's working on a live Beatles concert. I don't know if it's Candlestick Park or somewhere, but working on that, because I'm basically using the the AI to separate Ringo's drums off and the bass, because nobody's heard those before ever. Lost in the screaming, and you're able to take draw the veil back and then actually get so his view of it is that what he wants to do is make it so you can hear all the instruments, but it's like you're there, as well. So
probably.
For me, that sounds fantastic. That's
Andrew and Simon. It'll probably, sorry to interrupt, but it'll probably sound better than it did at the concert.
Absolutely, yeah. What was intended, not what you could hear.
Are you sure it's not Shea? You sure it's not Shea Stadium that he's?
Yeah, probably. It might easily be Shea Stadium. I'm sitting here trying to think, and it's all gone blank.
Yeah, I think don't hold me to it, but I think I read that recently that he's going to go back and polish that up, and well, look, we've all got the original, and we can compare the original with what he gives us, and that's going to be a great show.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Go back and do that and figure out, but to me, I think that's a really valid use of technology, and let's be fair, music has embraced technology, whether it's synthesizers, Moog synthesizers, whether it's Lin drums, whether it's pitch correction. These things are all technologies, and I think in these things, to be able to do that, you're not changing the performance, you're not changing anything. What you're doing is just being able to get a hold of all the instruments and then do a really cool mix of them so that you can hear everything. It's still played live. You're still not, you're not duplicating anything. You're taking what's already there, and and taking out the extraneous noise and things, and producing something that be worth listening to, rather than a lot of screaming and some people shouting in the background.
I'm a little bit excited to see what they come out with. To be fair.
I agree, because I've got some bootlegs of the Beatles that I can't even listen to because it's just the audio quality is that frustrating that it's just like I can't listen to it. Same with Hendrix and same with all those ones. And then when you get a really polished remastered version come out, it's like a blessing. It's like, wow, this is fantastic. And it is. It really is. It's truly magical to listen to. I mean, you think about it, we're listening to stuff the Beatles are doing in the studio. It's pretty amazing, really, when you think about it. Stuff that when they were recording this is probably the one point that's probably never been brought up either. When they were recording this stuff and doing these takes that we're listening to on Anthology 4, for example, they're probably thinking, no one's ever going to hear this.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely not. I was just thinking, Brad, going back to the thing, I have a friend of mine, Paul, who does a lot of, he's got a little studio in his garage, and above his garage, and he records lots of local singer-songwriters and local bands and stuff. He does it a lot. But one of the interesting he was saying to me when a couple of months ago when I last saw him, was that if somebody sends him a demo, just a singer-songwriter demo, the first thing he can do now is separate the voice from the guitar, so they're on separate tracks, and then he can add instruments in to sort of to fill out the demo. So he could put drums on it, he could put keyboards, he plays bass, guitar, so he can build a whole kind of demo, which you can then go back to sing and say, we can build it up, we can make it sound a bit like this, and so you get you take a sketch and then I'll fill it in, and that's using AI, that's using starting very simply, just separating the voice and the acoustic guitar, so you've got them as separate tracks. Then you can do things with them.
It's unreal, isn't it? I mean, I guess that's how they did Now and Then, isn't it? The Beatles, Paul and Ringo.
But yes, not that Paul. But Paul's just got a little studio in his his garage, and yet he's able to access all these tools, and and use them, for the to enhance what an artist, because all of a sudden you're not then playing to to a demo that somebody's done, and that could be tricky, adding this, when you can't separate stuff off and just tidy up and maybe do something with the actual timing of it and things. But interesting.
No, Andrew, what are your final thoughts on Anthology 4? I'm guessing, from what you're talking about, you're thinking that it's a great release and can't wait for more. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to do a shout out to Free Cake Tony. He's in the chat. Good to see him, Free Cake Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Tony.
Look, I'm a celebrator of this kind of stuff. It's right up our wheelhouse. The Beatles, the Stones doing this kind of stuff. Jimi Hendrix. I'd love us to be doing more shows talking about this stuff. We haven't done any shows talking about the Jimi Hendrix re-releases that have been, coming out regularly. But it's all good, and you can nitpick if you want to, and I agree that different fans want to be talking about that at different levels. Some guys aren't happy with this release, and that's okay. I'm not going to bother watching those shows or reading those articles, Brad. But I'm going to be certainly reading a lot more now that I've heard it, because we've got the same kind of method here between the three of us. When something comes out, we'd like to make our own mind up, and we don't even have a conversation ourselves about it, until we've seen it or heard it. So that's how much I appreciate your guys' opinions too. So look, it has to be celebrated, and like I say, I've got the DVDs here of the anthology thing. I'm glad that they're streaming it on Disney Plus, because as I opened up the show, mate, there's going to be a generation of Zoomers, 20 pluses, that
Zoomers,
that
Zoomers, boomers, and
Zoomers and boomers.
Nice.
You got it. That have not heard this band, or maybe have heard it, but are going to fall in love with the music. The same, you mentioned something, Brad. I remember when we the three of us did Abbey Road, and we all gave something Brad scores, because it deserves a Brad score. It's one of the greatest love songs ever written by a Beatle,
anybody.
and by anybody, yeah. And I'll never forget the first time I heard it, and I still love that song, Brad. It's just incredible, the music. So can you just imagine some 17-year-old hearing that for the first time, Simon?
I know completely. Yeah. It is amazing, and it would be amazing too. But absolutely.
Yeah, guys. Well, that's. I think we've sort of flogged it to death for this episode on Volume 4. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. We haven't actually sort of gone through and ranked anything, but
No.
it's a bit early to go ahead and do something like that with these anthologies. But
it's a hard thing to rank, though, bro. You couldn't rank Anthology. You couldn't rank it, could you?
No, I don't think it's possible, because it's not really an album, is what I was getting at before. It's more for the fans to go listen to, and then when you're done listening to it, you go put the album on to listen to again.
That's it.
Listen to it for about the 100 millionth time and still enjoy it.
No, I agree. It's like reference material, isn't it? It's you go back and reference something, or go back and look the background to something, and that's why these things are great. But you're right. I mean, yes, as I said earlier, this is the order you've got to do things in. You've got to listen to the released albums, then you can go back and do the anthology stuff. And I think that gives you background. It gives you an insight into the creative process. If you go and look at the Peter Jackson Let It Be stuff, again, that insight into the creative process is amazing. And we're extraordinarily lucky that one of the greatest bands, I'm saying the greatest band ever, we've got that insight into them as a, collection of individuals, their creative process and stuff. I think, that this adds to that and as I say, for me, it adds to it as kind of reference material, It's not for everybody, but if you're digging into it, then there's plenty to dig up, plenty to listen to, and plenty of background stuff to, to get something from. But I agree, Andrew. I don't, I would not like to, I would not like to be asked to rank the strings of something.
Impossible.
As you say, the song itself is a Brad score. The strings, well, I don't know. It kind of, I'd probably be going 6 out of 10, and sometimes a skip. Because but that doesn't do it justice. That's not. I think it's that we should keep well away from the ranking the tracks and stuff like this, because it gets a lot.
No, we've had a
trouble.
bit of fun, guys, and I appreciate your insights. And it sounds good. If you guys get an opportunity to listen to it on some headphones over the next week, and we'll be back next week. And surprise, surprise, we're going to be talking about the Beatles, but we'll definitely be watching an episode and just talking about, I suppose, the excitement of seeing this band on film. I never, I wanted a Beatles haircut. I wanted those Beatles boots. I wanted, I wanted
now
them, bro.
Be a wig.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe I should grow a mop top for the show. I haven't got enough time.
Well,
I need a few
next
more
week.
months.
How
Just
fast
came
does
it
your hair
forward.
grow?
Grow a little bit longer, you know.
Yeah, I don't think mine will do that. It's not enough of it.
But yeah, been a bit of fun, guys, and I appreciate hanging out with
Yeah.
you guys. We're going to be winding down, so we might have one or two rankings left on the channel. I think might be one or two maybe, but we've got our Christmas show, and we've also got our 3 top things and not so top things. We always look forward to that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it all, guys. But if you haven't, all I'm going to say is go have a good listen to Anthology 4. The mixes are stunning. Like they're crystal clear. They're you can really hear everything really, really well. And now they've done no trickery to anything. It's just you can clearly hear every instrument that's going at that particular time for the recording, which is magic.
Yeah.
Well,
certainly
that's
is.
what I particularly liked about. Hold on, just give me a second, guys. Please bear with me. That's what I particularly liked about. I made a quick little note here about Don't Let Me Down. The rooftop performance. You know, we've heard that before, but you know, just hearing that again. On this, you know, you can hear that the crunchy casino guitar. It's just incredible.
Makes me want to go buy a casino, Andrew.
Wow, you know, no pedals, Brad. Just going into a Fender amp.
Yeah.
Into a Fender the Fender Twin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, that's actually a good idea. Casino would look good in this bedroom here with all the Beatles stuff on the wall.
You're getting yourself into trouble here. We don't want Jackie breathing down our necks. Thank you so much. See, we're not encouraging. Jackie, if you're watching this, we're not encouraging this. That's what he said all on his own.
Simon, the problem is Jackie would probably agree. Yeah, go and buy it. That'll look great.
Can't get it. Yeah.
I'm actually going to tell her no.
Class.
We were in London. She told me to go buy Les Paul. I was like, no.
You only hear once, yeah.
All right, we're out of here, guys. We'll encourage you to go and listen to Anthology, and we'll be back next week talking about the series, albeit briefly for an hour and a half on Sunday, Simon.
Yeah, and we should say good morning to Dwight Bailey, who's up very late somewhere in the States. Thanks for dropping by, Dwight. Apologies, we're just finishing, but we've got Ellen as well, who's been in Morty's Diner, and Tony Bowen as well, the birthday boy. So thanks everyone for making comments, and hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week. Take it away, boss.
So an Andrew score will be a 0.
Oh.
Ooh.
No, we haven't done a 0. I think the lowest score we've given is a 5.
We've got to pick an album.
Sure? Didn't I give Parchment Farm something less than a 5?
Oh yeah, I gave it a 0. Yes, yeah. We gave it 0s. Yes, we have given a 0. And always a skip.
Did I not?
Yeah.
And did I not the sort of jamming ones on Jimmy Page and the
Yes.
And did I not give them severely low scores?
A 3. A 3.
3, did I? Yes, you see. Tisk.
Anything that's lower than a 3 is an Andrew score, I think.
There you go.
All right.
We're out of here. Rock bottom, Andrew.
Yeah. Oh well, you know me, bro. You know, if there's a bit of scrubbing to be done, I'll do it.
You get down and dirty, don't you? I know.
Yeah, right. You know. Yeah. All right, we're out of here.
Thanks, Xavier. Bye, everyone. Have a good week. Take care.